you go.
There we go.
Yes.
Mrs. Teed,
Mr. Patterson.
thank you very much for your time today.
You're very welcome.
I'm very grateful for you coming all the way through to the capital.
All the way through from the Shire.
From the Shire.
From the
Yes,
Shire.
indeed.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
a wee day out, you know. Don't
Yes.
get out much, Ross, you know.
Well, thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
very excited.
Yeah, so could you move the microphone
Move
just
that,
a little bit
yeah,
closer,
closer,
just to make
yeah.
sure that people can hear you?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
the reason I would, well, there's many reasons I would like to speak to you, Suzanne. And I've been speaking to you for many years.
Many years,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But I suppose what we're going to maybe talk about today was your line of work.
Yes.
So you're a humanist celebrant.
Yes.
Can you explain what that means?
A humanist celebrant is someone who does ceremonies for people who want to have a life ceremony, i.e. a wedding or a funeral or a child naming. I don't do child namings, but many of my colleagues do, that doesn't involve religion or any kind of act of worship.
So a ceremonial role.
A ceremonial role. So I do legal weddings, I do funerals, and it is very much about the people. It's about what they want, or how they want to celebrate the life of a loved one. If it's a funeral, how they want their wedding to be. It can be short, it can be long, but it's their choice. There's no doctrine involved. There's no religious aspect to it. Sometimes you can have certain things that are maybe symbolic, that have roots in religion. For example, I've married couples who have a Jewish heritage, and they still want to smash the glass because that represents the breakable. I think it's something to do with the breakable nature of marriage. It can break down, it can break, and that's symbolic, and they have to remember that you have to be working at it. I think it's that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's symbolic of their culture, not necessarily of their faith. A lot of symbolic gestures in marriage in Scotland are to do with very, very old customs, Celtic customs that probably predate any faith that was in the UK or the Celtic. The Celts started in northern Europe, worked their way down. And so you find that quite a lot of cultures have a similar thing to a loving cup, a quaich, but it's all to do with just cultural things rather than being a religious symbolism type thing. But essentially what I do is marriages and funerals for people who want to celebrate that rite of passage, but not involve a religion or a faith.
So your role is to you host the ceremony. You host these
conduct it. Yes.
Conduct,
Yeah.
And as you said, it is an intentionally secular approach. So where did that begin? When did you decide that you thought, this is something I would quite like to do and something I want to be a part of? Yeah,
well, initially, my dad died in 2003. And my mother was Church of Scotland, so it was very much the default was Church of Scotland. And that was fine because kind of at the time, 20 years ago, celebrants weren't really as much of a thing. And the town that I grew up in, I don't think they were really ready for something like that at the time either. But my dad wasn't religious, but he would have gone along with whatever mum wanted. So when Dad died, we had a Church of Scotland ceremony, and I felt as though the minister was talking about somebody else. At one point he mentioned Gordon's golf. My dad never played golf in his life. What's he talking about? But it was as if, my ceremonies, if I write a funeral for somebody, the family gets to see what I'm going to say. I don't just ship up and deliver a ceremony. They have to go through it and say, yes, no, that's not quite right. You didn't pick that up properly. But it was almost as if he'd maybe got mixed up with somebody else. And I don't think that's something you can get wrong.
Yeah.
you know, it's somebody's funeral. You kind of got to get the facts right about the deceased, you know. So roll on about another 10 years, and I went to a wedding, and a celebrant did a wedding at Stirling Castle. I'll never forget it. And I thought, wow, I would love to do that. That is fabulous. She was a very, very well-known celebrant. She's retired now, Mary Wallace. She was amazing. And I just thought that was the most personal wedding I've ever seen. And it was just so lovely. And it was all about the couple. You heard their story. You heard about, you know, their vows. They chose personal vows. They got to do everything they wanted. There wasn't anything dictating how that ceremony should go, other than there's a few lines you have to say that are legally binding in Scotland, but that would take about 4 seconds each of them, and then I have to say something. But everything else is built around their choices. Very different from a faith-based ceremony, which is very much based in the biblical text around marriage, or the Quran or Torah or whatever. So I decided, I think I quite like to pursue this. And it was quite a long process to become a qualified celebrant. But I thought, no, I think this is something I could do. I think I could be good at it. But it wasn't easy. It was a lot of work. Because it's not just turning up and doing a wedding. It's not just turning up and doing a funeral. It's the background to all that. You know, there's lots of people that can speak publicly that are very capable, but you have to understand people. You have to be good at asking questions and drawing out information from them. You have to be able to deal with a very distressed, bereaved family if it's a funeral. People are all also up to high dough with weddings. They are arguably more up the wall than at a funeral. You know, and as long as you know, you're able to talk to them about, you know, don't worry, whoever you've employed for this wedding will have done it all before, usually. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that's what I wanted to do. Because I used to work in finance and I hated it. I was bored out of my mind. And I gave it up when the kids were little, and I worked in our family business for a while. But I never felt as though I was in the right job for me. And being a celebrant is the right job for me. It's not for everyone. It can be incredibly stressful. You're on your own a lot. And that's why we have wee meetings every so often to just kind of go, oh my God, that was so difficult. I really need to talk to somebody about that. It depends on the circumstances as well. But, you know, some funerals are very distressing, but you can't come across as being in any way, shape or form distressed, because it's not your grief and it's not your loved one. So you have to remain completely professional, but sometimes you just have to have a wee chat with other people and, you know, what happened to you, and we discuss it, and we have that kind of bouncing off each other, so that we're not, you know, in a room going, God, that was awful. How did I get through that? It's much more kind of easy when you've got other people that are doing the same job as you to talk to. And not many people are doing that same job. So
how many celebrants are there?
I work on behalf of the Humanist Society Scotland, or Humanist Society Scotland, I should say, and there's about 130 of us. And we're all permanently registered as celebrants for marriages. And that's something that is a big deal. You have to be registered as a celebrant with Registrar General of Scotland. And people have to join the Humanist Society to get us to do their wedding. And it's partly because in order to retain our membership, not our membership, but our registration, people essentially have to be part of our belief system. So even though humanism isn't a religion as such, it is still a belief system. You know, some would argue that's kind of it flies in the face of what you're trying to be. But it means that we are marrying people that are purporting to be humanists. And And that has a very different take depending on who you are and how you feel about it. But everyone has a different take on what being a humanist is.
What does that mean? What are the beliefs? What?
Well, the Humanist Society Scotland has quite there's a very good website that sort of explains to you there. I mean, so essentially it's things like you have empathy, you have compassion. It's all about secularism. I mean, I very much think that state and religion should be two completely different things. Democracy, equality, just general human fulfillment. People can have a rich and exciting and full life without necessarily having to adhere to a faith, or a faith telling them how to live, or spending their life worrying so much about the next life that they don't enjoy the life they have. It's because a lot of faiths is about the afterlife, and you can be so busy worrying about what's going to happen to you. You don't enjoy the one life you have, I think. But it's also not about being because I think there's a danger of people thinking that humanism is atheism. You can be an atheist without being a humanist, because you can be a horrible atheist and not believe in being a decent person. It's slightly different. But I think there's a danger of also becoming a fundamentalist atheist. Because I think humanism is about just having respect for everyone, whether they've got a faith or not. I've been asked to do funerals for people, and I've actually had to say, I think you might need a minister. I think you might need a priest. I think you might need whoever. But I think you need a practitioner of the faith. Because a lot of people think they want a humanist, and maybe one of us will turn up and they say, oh, they wanted such and such a hymn, or, oh, well, we thought we could have a prayer. Well, I'm not a civil celebrant, I'm a humanist celebrant. I can't do anything for me that involves any kind of act of worship. And that's what's built into being a Humanist Society Scotland celebrant, or any humanist. And there's lots of other groups out there as well, not just us, who do a very good job. But it's sometimes you just think some people don't realise that they actually want something a wee bit more of a faith-based ceremony. Or they realise, actually, that was really nice. I've had people saying to me, oh, we weren't sure about this, we didn't know what this was going to be like, more so with weddings. And they say, oh, that was really lovely. It was all about love, and it was all about them, and it was all about their story. And they weren't ready to accept that it was actually going to be lovely. Because why quite often marry couples, maybe one's from one faith, one's from another, but instead of having either, which would cause all kinds of trouble, they've decided to have a humanist ceremony. And it's actually been lovely when you've had the parents come up and say, that was really good, I really enjoyed that, that was beautiful. Not realising that actually most religions are based on love, really. But over the years, they've got themselves into a wee bit more than that. And it does become a lot more about hate, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what a humanist ceremony is.
You said you're not allowed to weave in. You move your microphone a little bit closer. You said you're not allowed to weave in worship. What was the phrase?
Well, any kind of act of worship.
Act of worship.
Yeah.
But then you also said you can have like Celtic symbolism. And how do you toe that line?
Well, most Celtic symbolism it's not necessarily. It's more about the symbolic joining of a couple rather than it being any kind of doctrinal thing or any kind of faith-based thing. So, for example, I quite often will do a quaich with a couple. A quaich is a very, very old symbolic gesture between couples. There's a lot of controversy as to what the actual story is. But the story that I go with, and that a lot of celebrants go with, is a quaich has usually got two handles. If you don't know what a quaich is, it's usually a silver dish with two handles. You get them as not gift. You can get them at gifts at christenings or namings, or people have got them from a golf club or a prize at school or whatever. And they are a dish with two handles. And the reason they have two handles is because by holding them with two handles, that meant you weren't holding a sword, right? In Orkney, it goes one step further, where they used to get the local cooper to make what was essentially a wee barrel. It's called an Orcadian cog, and I've had this in multiple ceremonies. I say, if you can spell Orkney, have an Orcadian cog, because it's an absolute hoot. And basically, they just chucked the girl out of the house with every bit of alcohol they had, and then everybody drank it on the day, along with some. The night before the wedding, they had to drink some kind of bonkers soup made out of like dead seagulls or something. And that's hilarious. But it's essentially the same thing. It's the same sort of idea. It's a cup that you pass around. And so a quaich, usually you have one person from each side of the family adding a drink. It's all about Game of Thrones, kind of, that means you're not poisoning each other. And then it's the first thing that the couple do as a married couple, and you would say, Ross, please offer this to your wife or your husband, whatever. Offer it to your wife, your husband, and they drink from it, and then you say, whoever, pass this to Ross. And it's the first thing they do as a married couple. In a lot of weddings, they have a cake, first thing they eat. So that is more to do with the symbolism of the joining of the families. It doesn't really lie in any kind of faith-based thing. I suppose in many Christian churches, they have a communion, which was symbolising the cup that Jesus drank from the Last Supper. So it's nothing to do with that, as far as I know. But this loving cup quaich thing goes back a long way. There's other things you can do. Hand fasting, again, back in the day, people didn't really have rings or gold or anything, and they would bind their hands. People that have seen Braveheart and things like that go, oh, that's magic, I want to have, that's lovely, I love a wee hand fast. But actually, again, you maybe get mums or something up and say, this is the Patterson tartan, lovely tartan, nice one, Ross. Or this is the whatever tartan, and then you join the two tartans together, and then you can tie the knot, and that's where tie the knot comes from. Again, not based really in any kind of religious, faith-based thing. It's just a nice thing to do. There's other things you can do. You can light candles. Again, a unity candle probably does come from some kind of faith-based practice, where you would light a candle each and then you light a central candle. But in a humanist wedding, you keep your two candles lit because you're individuals, and the central candle is burns for both of you. And again, some faith-based weddings do that as well. But it's all just about choice. It's all about what do you want at your wedding. You don't have to do any of this. But you have to say certain words. In Scotland, it's actually a verbal contract, as a lot of very sensible Scottish laws are. And we're lucky in Scotland that you can be married by a celebrant. In England and Wales, unfortunately, you still can't.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No. Northern Ireland, you can. England and Wales, they're trying to put through legislation, but in England and Wales, you still can't be married by anyone other than a registrar or a minister of faith. So by a priest or minister or whatever, rabbi, whatever. Which, given that the census, I think, I don't know about England and Wales, but it's a huge chunk of people purport to not have a faith. So I think it's a shame that you can't get married. I know that the organisation I'm affiliated to, it's a charity that does a lot of very good work, and it's trying with the Humanists UK to try and help push that along. But no, I mean, same-sex marriage only came in Scotland in 2014. I mean, that is appalling.
Yeah.
My first wedding was 2 women, which was fabulous. I just felt so chuffed to be able to do that for them. It was brilliant. But given that it's 2025 and that only happened just coming up for 11 years ago, in Northern Ireland as well, I think they have it. But obviously you can get married in England, but again, not by a celebrant. It's crazy. It really is. But yeah, you know.
What was your first wedding like? How did that go?
I was really nervous. Well, at the time we had to learn, we had to do funerals first. So I had to do upwards of 30 funerals before I was allowed to go on wedding training.
Wow.
30 was a lot. And because basically you can't just sign up to be a celebrant to do the nice stuff, you know.
Yeah, the fun party.
Yeah, I mean, it's, although weddings can be very stressful, but, you know, as a humanist, I think it's very important that people get a good send-off, a good celebration of their life. And I think if you're happy to do that, and you should be doing it, if you're going to be a humanist celebrant, you can't just do the nice things. But my very, very first funeral was actually a double funeral, which was pretty scary because it was still within the realms of the time. And that's something, as a celebrant, you're always conscious of the time. I mean, I can look at a wedding or a funeral, I can tell it within a minute how long it's going to be. But when you're trying to cover the lives of two people, and it was a very elderly couple who died within days of each other, and I'd agreed to do the funeral of the elderly gentleman, and unfortunately his wife died, and we decided to do a double. But obviously they had a whole life before they met each other, and you know, and it was just trying to make sure that you covered the right amount of information, you know. And prior to that, when I did training, I mean, the interview to get on to Humanist Society Scotland training was the most intense interview I have ever had in my life.
What was it like?
A lot of scenarios got thrown up, like what would you do if that, how would you handle this, how would you handle that. I mean, you can't be a celebrant, and there are a lot of organisations that, you know, we can be a celebrant in a weekend. I would not want to take on a job as a celebrant doing somebody's funeral with 5 minutes training. We had to shadow people and shadow people and shadow people. We had to go to multiple funerals watching other people before we were even allowed to go through the assessment for funerals. I mean, if you can do a funeral, you can do anything, because you can't get it wrong. You can't mess it up. You can't mess up a wedding either, but things can happen at weddings where you can go, sorry, you know, the music stopped, you know, or whatever. Oh, Ross, we've been there, haven't we? These things happen, but that's okay. It's a wedding, it's a happy day, but, you know, things can happen at funerals as well. And for example, I did a funeral once, and I'm sure this group of people wouldn't mind. It was for a man who had unfortunately died in Loch Lomond. He'd been one of the very, very big fraternity of men that fished in Loch Lomond, and unfortunately he died. Sadly, fell off the boat, and he was such an interesting man. And the friends had all got together and organised the funeral, and they were a blast. They were all lovely guys, and they all turned up to the crematorium with the flies and the hats and all the fishing gear. And the place was mobbed, because this is a real brotherhood. Unfortunately, no women involved at all, but you know, but this is an example of something that can happen. And the only sort of criteria they had for me was the pictures to go on the coffin of him and the big fish. Right, it was him with this enormous perch, or I don't know what it would be in Loch Lomond, pike, I don't know. It was big and scary and big teeth, but anyway, that was just the deceased. No, he was a lovely man. But no, he, so I've started off this funeral, and then I could see this person waving at the back going, the photograph. And I was like, I'm in the middle of delivering a funeral with the place heaving with folk with fishing rods and flies. And I had to say, I think we all need to stand, because there's a very important photograph of the deceased now going to come down, and we're going to place it on the coffin, because this is what he wanted. And everybody stood. Everybody. I said, I think we need a round of applause for this, because that's okay, you can do that at a humanist funeral. And he placed the photograph, but he'd basically forgotten about it. But these things happen, and that's okay. But again, that comes with the experience of going, it's okay to stop this. I'm glad it wasn't my first rodeo. But there is that human element to this, that stuff can happen, and it's okay. We just go, I'm terribly sorry, I've forgotten to put the vote, but it was fine. And actually, they all thought it was part of the ceremony anyway. But yeah, I mean,
so you took kind of roll with the punches.
You have to kind of roll with the punches. Yeah.
And at these things, as you say, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of as you were the celebrant at a wedding we were both at recently, and I didn't realize I was a groomsman. I had no idea how much. That was the first wedding I'd ever been involved in, and I had no idea how much planning and detail and kind of. I suppose it's almost like choreography in a sense as well. Because you have a theatre background as well.
I do,
yeah. How do you? See when somebody says, right, Suzanne, I would like you to do my wedding. How do you then start to approach kind of building and planning and creating that ceremony for
Right.
it?
So I tend not to send it, because I send out a lot of information to couples. Ideas of vows, ideas of poetry, prose. What have you thought? Have you thought about this? Do you want to have that? Do you want? But I meet them before I send that out, because you don't want to give them sort of, preordained ideas of what they could have at their wedding, because they've maybe got an idea of what they want. I mean, a lot of people have been to a wedding, they go, God, I don't want to do that, or, oh no, we're not having any, poetry, oh geez, However, I do say to people, poetry is in context. I mean, you're reading a poem on a Friday afternoon, when you're having a coffee. It's not the same as you reading a poem at a wedding, somebody doing it for you. I'm a great believer in getting people to maybe write something for you, or choose something, there's a lovely poem that I like, which is called Falling in Love is Like Owning a Dog, because obviously I've got an obsession with dogs, and it's great for the dog lovers. I get a lot of dog loving weddings because they know I like dogs, so I quite often get groomsmen that are, a Labrador or whatever. That's another story, the one that ran away. Talked about that later. But yeah, I mean, so I then meet them and I say, right, okay, so there are a few words you have to say. So say it's Jeannie and Bobby. Bobby has to say, I, Bobby, accept you, Jeannie, in marriage. And then they can say, if they want, to be my wife, to be my lovely wedded wife, to be my life partner, whatever they want. And I, Jeannie, accept you, Bobby, in marriage. That's the legal bit. To be my husband, partner, whatever. I then have to say, Jeannie, I therefore declare you, Jeannie, and you, Bobby, to be married. And then, as an extra, and I therefore declare you to be husband and wife, soul partners for life, whatever they want to be. But those 3 lines are the crux of a Scottish marriage, a Scottish legal marriage. And everything else is secondary to that. So if they want to have, say, somebody reading a poem, quite often you get children maybe reading a poem. I get them to do that at the beginning so they're not nervous. Ask them who they're having, because sometimes that person maybe is not, are they used to speaking in public? If you've got 100 people outside at a wedding somewhere, you've got to really get somebody that can speak over 100 people. So it's lovely to have your niece or nephew who's 7 reading something, but if they can't actually be heard, it's kind of lost. Again, you want them to tell their story. They know their story. Everyone else knows their story. But ultimately, this is you contextualising why you're there on that day. So this is Jeannie and Bobby. They met at school, or they met at uni, or they met working together. And this is what happened when they went on holiday, or there's maybe a funny story, or when they had their child, or when they got their puppy. And then maybe talk about their proposal. You're telling their love story. What is their love story? Because this day is all about their love. And then I'll say to them, do you want to write your own vows? Do you want to choose from a selection? Because some people are so nervous and they want to keep it absolutely to the bare minimum. And that's fine. You're no less or no more married. if you choose to just say the two lines to each other. I mean, if it's people like that, I will quite often say, well, why don't you keep them quite traditional and have an I do, that kind of thing, and then you can have the legal vows. But some people do want to write their own, and that can work really, really well, and I'll put them onto card for them. And I just say to them, just try and keep them about the same length. You know, as they say in Friends, don't do 18 pages front and back. Keep it simple. Because you've got to always think about the guests. You've got to engage people in that 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 35 minutes, depending on what they're having. And 35 minutes is actually quite a long time to sit without it being engaging. So I have sometimes had to say to couples, I think there's a bit too much going on here. This is looking like 35 minutes. That's quite long. Given that people will be seated maybe 10, 15 minutes before, I always try and encourage folk come in at the very last minute because it's a long time, especially if there's children. So again, ask them, do you want to have a quaich? Do you want to have a hand fast? Do you want to have candles? Do you want to have a sand ceremony? Do you want to keep it completely, simple? It's entirely up to them. It's their wedding. So, but I just like to try and make it fun, engaging, but it has to be poignant and beautiful when it has to be, because it is a wedding and it is important. You shouldn't be getting married if you're not taking it seriously, So that's the sort of process, and then I give them a tick list and I say, right, chronologically, this is kind of how this is going to work, but just put on this form what you want, and then I'll write the wedding, and then I'll go back to them and say, right, this is draft 1, what do you think? And this is how long I think it will be.
What does that look like? Is it like is that say a written document?
It's a written document. It is literally everything I'm going to say is on that. It's like a script.
Right.
And it's got everything on it from, so for example, the wedding I did with you, it would say, this is where the groomsmen are going to stand, this is where the best man's going to stand, who's handing over the rings, who's walking the mums up the aisle. All the choreography's in there, because if somebody's ill, we have a sort of promise with our organisation, if anything happens to your celebrant, you will get another one. So if you don't write in exactly what that couple want, if somebody has to pick up your ceremony, they need to know exactly what to say and exactly what to do and how to do it, what the music is. Sometimes people will maybe have one or two different, they'll have like bridesmaids music or music for people, and then the bride will maybe have a different tune or whatever. I married 2 friends of mine and they were both having different music coming in. And that's quite normal now. But it's very it's very much a process of, right, okay, well, that's not quite how you want that. We'll change that round. Draft 2. I mean, I don't tend to get much beyond draft 2 because everything's been ironed out in draft 1. And it's, when do you want your wedding party to sit down? Again, you have to think about the size of the room, and you can't really have 12 people standing there. It's not going to be big enough. Think about that. If they've got a dog wanting to come in, which again is quite common, think about when the dog's going to come in. Is it going to jump all over your frock? You don't want that. So maybe think, right, we're going to bring the dog in, or what's going to happen with, if they've got young children, have somebody there, because quite often children between the ages of about 3.5 can be very fractious at 2:00 in the afternoon. If they've not had lunch, they're roasting, they've been sitting about, and they kick off the minute they see mum or dad appearing. So again, that's written in. Think about who that person will be to maybe lift them, take them out. It is very much written as a script with a lot of choreography, so that you know exactly what's going on, because you want to make it look seamless. And obviously I've done it for a long time, so I know what to do if there is a problem. But you just roll with the punches, as you say. You go, that things it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally, I've had bridesmaids fainting, and because again, quite often they've not had anything to eat. Yep. It's a hot day.
Stressful.
They've had a prosecco or two, and even though I keep saying you can't drink, oh God, because I can't drink. It marries people that are under the influence of too much alcohol, or
really? Is that
oh
one of the
yeah,
rules?
yeah, absolutely
that
not.
makes sense, yeah.
Oh yeah, well they can't make
Get
promises,
consent,
legal words. They can't say legal words if they're drunk, so you've a glass of prosecco, fair enough, but not hammered down the aisle. No, absolutely not. But that doesn't really happen. I mean, people are sensible, and but yeah, sometimes bridesmaids can get, and groomsmen as well. Like quite often the groom's kind of busy, or whatever. If it's two grooms as well, they've usually got a lot of groomsmen, and quite often they're in the sun, in a shirt, a waistcoat, a tweed jacket, a kilt, the socks, and they are absolutely boiling. And I mean, I bring a mass array of stuff like hairspray, because sometimes the hair's all going because they're roasting. Quite often the bridesmaids have got on a nice dress that's quite cool, or the alternative is the bridesmaids are absolutely freezing because it's October and you're outside in a grassy knoll somewhere and it's freezing. But I have done some weddings in some crazy places. Like you just think
Where do people choose?
I'm
what
going
kind of
to
crazy
die.
places do they choose?
I did one during Storm Owen.
You told me about that. Can you tell what that was like? And was it not outdoors?
It was outdoors, yeah. And they were a lovely. I mean, they honestly wouldn't mind me telling, because they're in Australia anyway. But they had their wedding, and we were worried about it because it was really stormy. But at the end of the day, I mean, I really wanted them to have the best experience, and they had a beautiful. I mean, their photographs were absolutely fabulous. But it was down in a kind of knoll in a forest. I mean, you could have been anywhere. I mean, I didn't necessarily have to be miles away in a forest. But actually, we were slightly further north than where the worst part of the storm was, but we were down in a kind of knoll. It was beautiful, but I thought, if this tree comes down, we're stuck here beside this wee lochan for the rest of time, I've done one in Thunder and Lightning. That was really scary, up a mountain. Oh my God, I'm going to die. But again, I don't really mind. I just think weddings are just so fabulous, and this is where they wanted it. It means something to people. They don't just choose these places randomly. They've chosen it for a reason. Glencoe is so atmospheric. I understand why so many people want to get married in Glencoe. You do get asked a lot for places that are kind of on the telly, or or they've seen them because they watch Outlander or something. And the slight danger is, I don't think people always quite understand that they're a public place, and there could be somebody out with their dog, like at your wedding,
Photo.
In the photo. I mean, I did one in Loch Lomond once, and this Labrador sort of like snuffled through, and it was really funny. The family were fine, but you are in a public place.
Yeah, you can't script for that.
You can't, and I do go way ahead of time, and I will say, I'm really sorry, there's actually a wedding happening here, and people are lovely, but they actually are under no obligation to move, especially on a beach like St Andrews or something, which can be busy. And you just want people to have the very best of days. And actually, most people will go, "Oh, that's really nice. Don't worry, we'll move. It's fine." But you do end up in folk watching. I mean, I've done weddings at the Botanics in Edinburgh where a whole entire family decided to sit on the seats. This is actually a private wedding. You can't sit there. Okay. I mean, you couldn't make it up sometimes, really. You really couldn't. But it's generally just a happy thing, It's lovely, and I love doing it. I think that comes across. Like, I'm not down a mine, And I do think it's important that people have that choice of a humanist wedding in Scotland, because it is a different type of ceremony to a civil celebrant or a registrar or a faith-based wedding. It's up to them, really, what they want to have. But I mean, going right back to my childhood, I never ever got religion. I used to sit in Sunday school and we'd go, I don't get this. I just don't get it. As a 5-year-old, I didn't get it. And I understood what the message they were trying to put across. But I just remember thinking, I don't know, I don't get this at all. And I do believe Jesus was a very good person. Obviously he existed, but I certainly don't think he's the son of God or anything like that. But I fully appreciate a lot of people think that, and that's totally their prerogative. But I think he was a very good person trying to put across a very good and strong message. And likewise, a lot of what these biblical texts say are, I mean, they all come from Abraham. The three main religions are, Islam and Judaism, Christianity are all basically from Abraham texts. And a lot of the stuff in the Old Testament, etc., these are great rules for life, absolutely. But they were written by people.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's just a way of living your life, which is basically essentially the humanist rules for life. But a deity's been attached to them, which I've never really understood. And I don't like any kind of religion and state being joined together. I think they should be completely separate. France is quite good at that. But growing up, I really struggled because as a child growing up in the 70s, give my age away here, Ross, you thought I was 40, didn't you? It was everything revolved around the church. Mm-hmm. I mean, where I grew up, there was about 9 churches in this main road going through this part of the town. And there was brownies, there was scouts, there was the BB, there was your mum went to something, then there was the camera club, that club, they all surrounded the church. And so there was just no getting away from it, and, even then, I think the brownies and the guides and the scouts and all that, I think they take a promise to your God. I think this brownie promise has now been changed to being a bit more wide, because not all kids are Christian. But it's still, I don't know whether they have a secular promise now, correct me if I'm wrong, but even then I thought, I don't get what I'm promising here. I don't like this.
So what didn't you get? You said you didn't get it.
I didn't understand what they were talking about. I mean, trying to get a 5-year-old to wrap their head around the resurrection was a wee bit, and it was these kind of flickering films that were obviously made in the 1950s, and it was all about St. Paul, and flickering black and white, and these scary Sunday school teachers that were terrifying. And I just remember thinking, I don't think that happened. But not the way they were making it out to be. It
wasn't literally true.
It wasn't literally true. It was symbolically true. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of obviously what was written in the Bible was written by St. Paul X number of years, 40 odd years later. But I'm interested in religion, and I like to understand religion, because I think knowledge is power. And to argue against the case, you have to understand what you're arguing against. I think so much of religion is based on fabulous moral codes. But it doesn't mean to say that they were made up by some kind of deity. Mm-hmm. No child, I think it's Richard Dawkins. I mean, again, Richard Dawkins is quoted as saying, I've got it here in my wee sheet. Again, Richard Dawkins is a wee bit of a kind of fundamentalist atheist, and I think he thinks everyone with a faith's an idiot, and they're not. But he said, a child is not a Christian child or a Muslim child, but a child is with Christian parents or a child with Muslim parents. That goes for any faith, I suppose. A child who is told she is a child of Muslim or Christian parents will immediately realise that religion is something for her to choose or reject. Or I think what he's saying is, is it something they can choose or reject? Probably not, but they're not born. Nobody is born any religion. You learn it. And, I was brought up in Scotland. It's fundamentally a Christian country, and that's what you're born. That's what you're born into. That's how it's going to be. And my mum, I think, I didn't come from a particularly religious family. Mum kind of, went occasionally, but it was what you did, not because you necessarily believed in it.
Everyone does it.
Because everyone does it. And it is a bit kind of like, what's that game, would wee people fall off the cliff? Not Minions, it's wee people and they kind of just fall. It's a computer game. And it's kind of blind faith, it's blind following of it, But I definitely questioned everything as a child growing. I remember being sent to Bible class, which was like the kind of senior Sunday school. And saying to the minister, what do you think God is? And he kind of went, oh. And is it some kind of cosmic thing? I don't know. I got that one from my sister. Is it some cosmic awareness or what? And she'd already asked that question, I think. But I don't think he knew how to answer that because he wasn't used to children of 11 asking him quite deep questions. But again, in school, we had assembly 3 times a week, prayers, singing hymns, you name it. And again, I think religious education's important, but I don't think a specific one religion, which I think in Scottish schools, they are essentially Church of Scotland, and a minister will go in. And that at the moment is your child will do that unless you take them out. But I think there's an argument, as the Humanist Society of Scotland is trying to change. I agree with this. It should be your child, you put them in for that rather than you taking them out.
Yeah, opt in.
Opt in, not opt out, because I think children will just do whatever their mates are doing.
Yeah.
And if you're taken out of something like that and you're the only one, then it's like, oh God, I better just go along with this. But I think there's better things necessarily a lot of children would rather be doing than having some kind of sermon or whatever that they're not interested in. But I do think it's important that they get RE to learn about all faiths and actually no faith at all, because I think that's something that's been missing. There is a choice to not have one. You don't have to be any of these. You can be agnostic, you can be atheist, you can be humanist, I suppose. And some of my colleagues do go into schools and speak to schools as well, which is good.
What do you think we should teach children? Like what kind of spiritual, is it beliefs? Should you pass down spiritual beliefs to children, or do you think it should be up to them to decide? I
think children will go with whatever their parents tell them up to a certain age. And I think the trouble with a lot of rites of passage within faiths is that there's a big party involved. So, for example, if you have a bat mitzvah, a bar mitzvah, at 13, that's you becoming a man or a woman into the Jewish faith. And there's a great big party involved where they give you loads of money, fantastic. But, and obviously that is you becoming a man, and you are now kind of properly within that faith. And the Catholics have First Communion. And again, that's a big deal. And I think a lot of children, it's just what you do. Do you have a choice? You would argue they probably don't really know, because they don't know anything else. It's like what that quote was. It's like children are not born into a particular faith, but they grow into one. Unless you start asking questions, which in some realms of their societies would not go down very well at all. I mean, can you imagine? So I think it's very difficult for some people to have a choice. But schools do offer religious education is different from religious observance. And there is religious observance within schools. A minister will go in.
Yeah, I had the old time I was in high school.
Oh yeah,
assemblies on a weekly basis.
They will, yeah. And that is different from being taught about various religions around the world, of which there are many, many, many. In fact, there's another very interesting quote. I can't remember who this one's by. Sorry, I'm rustling. Which which is, we're all atheists about most of the gods that humanity has ever believed in. But some of us just go one god further. which is true. And it is all, again, it's all to do with fear. People are scared to not have a faith. You know, I mean, my mum, I would say, wasn't particularly religious, but she did go because she used to say, I like to keep my hand in. Because I think she was scared not to. And Marie Curie, obviously a wonderful scientist, she said, nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. So understanding that everybody dies, everybody lives, live your best life as best you can, but don't be scared about the next life. You know, just enjoy and make the very, very best, which she obviously did. You know, an inspirational woman, because I think fear is the central core of so many religions.
So what do you think the fear, you're saying that people are afraid, what do you think they're afraid of? Not getting into the next life, the afterlife?
I think because we don't know what it's the finality of death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people struggle to wrap their head around that. But essentially, quite often what I'll say is a funeral, you live on. The family lives on. You know, you are the descendants of whoever the deceased is, and you know everything they've taught you, everything they've discussed with you, every part of their personality will be in you. Mm-hmm. You know, so essentially they do live on, but very much in a kind of genetic way, in a kind of DNA. You know, you are part of them. But you know, that's what people, I think, struggle to. They don't understand, and it is a very, very human thing to go, this can't just be it. Surely not. And religion is a way, a structure for basically wrapping your head around that it's not just all over. And you know, but for some people, it's just the very thought, they just can't imagine that. I mean, for me, I think it's worse for the people that are left than the person that has died. You know, I just don't think you can spend your life worrying about something that, you know, you've got no control over.
And is inevitable.
And is inevitable, well. Death and taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the root of all evil. I mean, there's a I think it's actually a biblical quote. It's from, I think, Timothy. Timothy, where is it? I've got it on my wee sheet here, Ross. Yeah, Timothy said, and it's actually misquoted a lot of the time. People say the root of all evil is money. Money is the root of all evil. It's actually, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. But I could argue that in many ways, religion is the root of a lot of evil as well, because the wars around the world that are based on faith and the bigotry and the hatred and the just general, if it's not about that, it's about territory or something like that as well, but a huge amount of it is about religion and religious intolerance. And you know, to this day, it's still going on. You know, as that sort of tribalism everywhere, and a lot of it is based in faiths.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think conflict comes from religion like that? I think any kind of group of people who have one point of view. I mean, it's like political parties as well. If you've got a point of view that doesn't, you know, align with somebody else's, you're going to have a beef with it. Yeah. And you know, even if you've basically got the same faith, you know, it's different incarnations of that faith that cause so much grief and just
misery, but I don't see how that's ever going to be solved. It's just not. And and again, the more fundamental people are. I mean, I think in America at the moment there's a real danger of a real Christian fundamentalism really taking hold. You can see that coming into their politics. Everything is just becoming, you think, where's this come from? Land of the free, no anymore. In terms of women's rights, in terms of all sorts of things, this is creeping in, and all around the world. If you look at lots and lots of conflicts, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is about choices people have made in faith, and it's so sad. But it's just a human nature is to be, well, I don't agree with you, or that's my bit of land and you're not having it, and or whatever. I mean, neighbours fight over a couple of inches of garden, and you can imagine what it's like if it's land anywhere or whatever, and it's all over the world. It doesn't matter where it is. If you look at all conflicts, there's usually some kind of religious or territorial basis to it, which is a shame.
What do you think we can choose to have faith in? Because you need to believe in something. What do you think is a useful thing to believe in? That maybe
mankind.
Mankind. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Mankind can be like, at the moment there's a maybe multiple genocides happening in the world. There's one in Sudan, and in Fasher, in the city, Yemen, in Gaza. We've seen the past 2 years. Ukraine. Mankind can just be absolutely brutal and terrible and violent. And where do you find the faith in humanity?
Yeah, I mean, I think humanity, people again are born good. They've learned how to be bad people, and I think there needs to be more good people standing up for good. How exactly that's going to happen, I'm not entirely sure, but it's amazing how in the last few years, like how the kind of line that's coming from some people are believing it and going, yeah, I believe that. And 20, 30 years ago, it would never have been allowed to happen. But you do get the odd person in this world. Hitler's one of them, Stalin's another. You could argue Trump's going down this line as well. I mean, Putin's a dictator. But how Trump in America, with the constitution they have, is getting away with all this is absolutely beyond me. And people are bringing religion into their politics. And he's going, yeah, I agree with that as well. And I find that really scary. Because fundamentally, I think people are good. But they're also easily persuaded. Get a good car salesman, you walk out the door with a new car and you're like, how did I do that? What was that all about? I used to mystery shop for a well-known department store, and I get completely, I couldn't leave the shop without buying stuff because the salesperson was so good. You really need a sat-nav, and I couldn't say, I'm actually here to mystery shop your department. I'm not meant to buy anything, but I would end up going, oh God, okay, I'll buy the sat-nav. And it's a bit like being persuaded into, come along to our course. I mean, the Alpha course was very successful a few years ago. They managed to get a lot of people into the Church of England. And it was essentially a very, very, very clever way. I mean, they were very successful. And actually, I understand why people join churches. It's a community. I mean, church is actually a collective noun for the group of people. It's not the building. So going to church means you're going to meet that group of people that are like-minded or are trying to persuade you to be like-minded. And if you're a person who's a bit lonely or who needs to have some kind of structural type thing in your life, like I go here on a Sunday, I do this, I get why people do that. And you kind of end up being kind of involved, and it's a bit like any club or society, I'm a member, I like being a member, I'm a card carrying member. but you don't. You can be a good human without necessarily being a faithful human to a religion. I mean, humankind is very damaged, but not everywhere. You know, people can live in harmony.
And most people do.
Most people
well.
do. Yeah, I mean, I remember being on holiday in France one year, and we met this Dutch couple with their family, and I'll never forget what the guy said. And he was English. He was married to a Dutch woman, and the two wee kids that were playing with ours. And I said, "Well, how do you like living in the Netherlands? Is it?" Because I actually think the Dutch people are very like us. And he said, "People are just people, no matter where you go. They just want to go to work and have their children and have a nice time." And he's right, they do. You know, but that's the bottom line. People just want to get on with their lives, and the vast majority of people don't get involved in any kind of drama. I think it's important to vote. I think women struggled to get the vote, you know, and the way to get change is to vote, or, you know, but not necessarily get into politics, but I think if you want to say something, you need to say it. You know, that's a whole other.
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think there's lots of people that want things to change, but they don't actually do anything about it. So, you know, go to meetings, put your hand up, say I don't agree with this. Make sure you vote. Make sure the right party gets in. I mean, it might not always be what you want, but again, we just have to compromise. But I think any political party that is aligned to any kind of faith, which in this country we're very lucky they're not, but there are bishops in the House of Lords. And if there's bishops in the House of Lords, I don't know whether there are other faiths represented, but there is a big cohort of bishops, which is an unelected house, which I don't agree with. But, you know, put your money where your mouth is, you know. And that's why I felt as though I wanted to be a celebrant, because I felt as though people like me deserve to get a nice send-off or a nice wedding, or people that have children want a naming. I don't do them, but...
Why do you not do them?
Because quite often they're on a Sunday. And
that's the Sabbath.
Which is exactly why I think people think they have to have them on a Sunday, and they don't. They could have them on a Tuesday morning, you know. But it's too much with weddings and funerals to be, and actually I think it can be quite difficult. There's a lot of children there, and it's quite hard to talk for 20 minutes over a lot of children. It's not what I want to be doing. It's the one day that I quite often see my family, or can go and travel to see my family, so I don't do them. But, you know, they can be lovely as well, you know, and people just want to say, this is son of Jeannie and Bobby. You know, this is wee Callum, you know, and they have a nice day, and you can have what's called a significant adult that's in their life, not it's what we probably back in the day have called a godmother or a godfather or whatever. You just say you're a significant adult, but it's really just for them to say I'm important in your life and have a wee party. But you know, to have something like that 6 or 7 weeks or whatever after your baby's been born, I was absolutely knackered. So. Most people wait till they're a wee bit older now, but you know, it's all about rites of passage.
Yeah, and
you know.
So see, when you're saying religion, so when you were young, you would go to Sunday school, and it was a big part of society.
Yeah.
It sounds as if in kind of your lifetime, it has become much less.
Oh yeah.
Atheism is massively increased as a religion people say they subscribe to. Even in my lifetime, when I started primary school. We would say grace before lunch, but then that stopped while I was still at primary school because I think it was thought of as a bit too much. And then into high school, we still had a minister that would come and speak at assemblies and stuff, but again, it was much less a thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people kind of worry that we lose these rites of passage, and we lose these ceremonies, and we lose all of this kind of ceremonial structure that we have in society when religion starts to disappear. Do you think that's valid?
I think the more people realise that they can have a secular sort of humanist, or whatever you want to call it, type thing, which is definitely becoming more and more and more of a thing with weddings especially, and funerals now. People still need a funeral. People still want a wedding. People still like that, the commitment, public commitment to someone. So it's not as if weddings have gone out the window. They haven't. If anything, weddings are even more popular as they ever were before. You just don't do it in a church. And I also think things have changed in that 10:30 on a Sunday morning. It's a bit like watching a Netflix thing. You can watch the whole programme, the whole series. You don't have to watch it at 10:30 in the morning. So if you want to be Christian or any religion, do you necessarily have to be in a building to do that? But then you kind of lose that sense of community that you have. And I think that's something that has kind of slightly, churches have closed left, right and centre because the membership just went, especially Church of Scotland, have just gone absolutely downhill because they were big, cold buildings to heat. Some churches have diversified into kind of being a meeting place, so they've taken the pews out, so it's a big empty space, and that's worked really, really well. I've married people in old churches, or there's a couple that are still used as churches, but they rent out their space, which is lovely because people still want that feeling of a church.
They're just the most beautiful buildings.
I absolutely love churches. Because to me, I've been to massive, beautiful cathedrals. I remember going to Notre Dame before the fire because I just love cathedrals, and they were auditioning an organist. And to me, that's a very humanist moment because this church was built by people 800 years ago. And their technology, and that is a massive human achievement. And if anything, that is a great celebration of humanity, to be able to build that with that level of pretty rudimentary architecture and just their skills in stonemasonry, and this guy playing this organ. It was incredible. It was brilliant. And I remember the family went away somewhere else, and I just sat in this cathedral going, wow, this is unbelievable. And again, I love Westminster Abbey because it's full of poets. There's Poets' Corner, and everywhere you turn, there's so-and-so in there. Wow. And the history that comes with it all, and just the sheer human endeavour to build that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
All of which are a celebration of their devotion. Again, the pyramids. Still don't know how they did that, but wow. Again, it was all to do with their devotion to their pharaoh and their afterlife and where they were going, and making him comfy with his entire farm in a pyramid. It's, to me, that's a celebration of their skill as a builder, as an architect, as a mathematician, to actually hold this thing up. A lot of 12th, 13th century cathedrals, they managed to suss out how to have kind of, archways and things that didn't fall apart, and actually by having an archway it was a stronger structure. But that's amazing, and nowadays you look at the architecture, arguably it's not nearly as beautiful and as fabulous as it was 800 years ago. Well, Henry VIII did burn most of them down, but that's a whole other story. But my joy in seeing things like that is because that's just such an amazing human thing to have done. And again, things like music and beautiful poetry, it's humans that write that. How could Mozart have done that? Wow, that's incredible. And I love early music, and it's fabulous. A lot of it is Christian music, but it's just the sheer skill. Being able to write, Thomas Tallis, for example, could write 14-part harmony for a choir. That to me is his humanity rather than it coming from a god. So
you celebrate, the human.
You're celebrating the human
triumph,
the
ingenuity, and the brilliance.
Stephen Fry. I love this quote of Stephen Fry's. He says, "I am a lover of truth, a worshipper of freedom, a celebrant at the altar of language and the purity and tolerance of life. That is my religion. And I think that's spot on. He's actually a very good example of someone who doesn't slag off people who have a faith. He's very tolerant. Brian Cox is another one, the scientist. He's an interesting guy. He's a patron of a UK humanist, I think. And but you know, they are very rational in their discussions. But Stephen Fry, he's had some belters of arguments with people. Oh my God. Christopher Hitchens as well, but again, he can be quite divisive by being quite aggressive. And you know, you don't want to be an aggressive humanist, because that's not really what it's about, you know. It's about being tolerant and being kind and being, you know, my favourite word in the entire world is joy. And Burns, I say this at the end of most of my weddings, because it's a line from A Phone Kiss from Burns, which is a song I love, and it's peace, enjoyment, love and pleasure.
Peace, enjoyment, love
and pleasure is a lovely way to say this is how to go into your marriage, with peace, enjoyment, love and pleasure. And you could say that about life in general. Just, you know, if everybody just took a wee step back and went, this is all nuts. You know, it really is. And, you know, love animals, love the ocean, but it can also be very cruel as well. And again, Stephen Fry says, every day I'm sorely, grossly, heinously and deeply offended, wounded, mortified and injured by 1,000 different blasphemies against it. You know, and he talks about, you know, children and dying and war and people being bludgeoned to death. And it's like, where's the God here, you know? But again, I would urge anybody that's interested in this Stephen Fry sort of thing, he does an amazing interview with RTE. I think it's Gabriel Byrne, and it's a very, very interesting take on his humanism, atheism, maybe not, but he's a very interesting man.
Yeah. I've seen him once as well. He's talking to, I'm not sure, maybe that is an older man. I can't remember.
Yeah, there's also one when he's talking to a bishop or something, and
he's talking about, like, why would God design a parasite that burrows into the
children's eyes? Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Why would he sit and decide, like, this is something I want to make?
Yes, and I think that's a very powerful interview, and it's a very persuasive one. But you also, I think there's one that was done in the Oxford Debating Society as well. I can't remember who that was, but that was very powerful as well. In fact, Charlie Kirk, who's unfortunately just been assassinated, and that was very, very, very sad what happened to him. Nobody deserves to be taken out like that. But he's also doing, there's a lot of him at the Oxford Union.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
And, you know, that's very interesting what, you know, and his underlying theme is coming out a lot in America at the moment, which is very worrying. In fact, unfortunately, his funeral was used as a bit of a rally, which is no, and his wife was actually fabulous. She did a really good job. But that kind of hate's just so scary, you know.
Why do you find that so scary? What is it that you're afraid of? Why does it give you pause?
Because I think, I mean, I was terrified the first time Trump got in. I watched CNN for 3 weeks because it went rumbled on and on and on and on and on. And this time I just thought, this cannot seriously be happening, because he will agree with the last person he speaks to. And he knows that the American right is very much hand in hand with fundamentalist Christianity. And, you know, anything like that, it's going to erode women's rights. It's going to erode, there's going to be all kinds of racism involved. And we can see what's happening already. People are being handcuffed in the street and disappearing. And I just think anything like that is scary. I hope to goodness somebody comes along and says, no, you can't do this. and I don't understand why there isn't an opposition. But at the end of the day, he won an election fair and square.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, he doesn't agree with the last one when Biden got in. But Biden won fair and square, but he didn't like that. But it is democracy. I like to think we live in a democratic country here. I'd like to think that wouldn't happen here. I think the Brits are a wee bit less fervent. And I think the way their constitution is set up, it's meant to be watertight, and it doesn't appear to be doing that at the moment. I mean, these guys, I've seen Hamilton twice. I know all about it, Ross.
I only saw Hamilton for the first time recently.
Did you?
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
The King.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, as you say, though, the checks and balances were designed, in many ways, I think they were designed for someone like Donald Trump, who doesn't really seem to care too much about democracy, doesn't care too much about the rule of law.
No.
If he could be, he would probably be a kind of autocratic dictator.
Yeah, well, it's going that way, isn't it?
But it's also being blocked. He is also being the checks and balances are working in many ways. There's lots of stuff he's doing that everyone's like, are you like? So he took down a big chunk of the East Wing recently of the White House
to build the ballroom.
Yeah, to build a ballroom, but he is technically allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So he is still working within the kind of rules of the.
I think it was a 1940s building. I don't think he's taken down. 17th century. Well, it's not 17th. I think that the White House was built in 18 something. I don't know. No, can he be? Don't know. Anyway,
not sure. Need a fact checker. In
fact checker, yeah. But yeah, I mean, he wants a legacy, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
That'll be the Trump ballroom or whatever. What I thought was a shame, he took away the Rose Garden, which was beautiful. I think it's been monoblocked. Oh dear, good God!
And Donald Trump loves gold as well.
Oh
and
my
it just looks
God!
So
I know.
Like the amount of gold he puts
I know.
on stuff.
Well, I mean, I was in New York a couple of years ago, and Trump Tower's in an odd place. Actually, it's not what I expected it to be. It's on a kind of I don't really have roundabouts. It's at a sort of intersection, and this building just kind of goes Trump. And it's shiny, and and you can see why people go, I think I need to go in there, It's sort of like the gold, and it's all a bit Pharaoh-esque, It's like I love my gold. I mean, it was like because Muhammad Al-Fayed, when he took over Harrods, he made it all gold, Egyptian, and everybody was kind of, this is not really very Harrods, but people seem to still go to Harrods, But I mean, it's. I don't know. I just feel as though the world is is looking at America and going, just going to know. just going to know do that, I mean, the other day he was with the Chinese president, and you could see the Chinese president going, help me now.
It was pretty cold.
Please help me. Oh yeah, it was very, like,
but they got a deal done.
They got a deal done. I know. I mean, I have to say, kudos. I'm not a royalist, but kudos to the royal family having to do all that. Oh my God, poor Catherine. Her head was killing her. That tiara was kind of jaggy, but she's like, they're sitting me next to Donald. And I bet she kept the chit chat up, because I suspect she's very good at. To give her a due, I think she does a good job. It was like, what are we doing? Oh my God. But at the end of the day, if it gets Britain, if and there is a lot of exports and imports between us and the States, so they had to do what they had to do. But I'm not into that kind of,
the
schmoozing that they had to do. I mean, honest to God, it was hilarious. But then Melania got a wee day out with the Cubs with Kate, so I actually thought that was quite nice. I don't think she can be bothered. I don't even think she wants to be First Lady, but hey ho, But one of the quotes that I love. Have you read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius?
Yes,
yeah. That's a big book with my kids as well. And he said, no one was ever injured by the truth, but he who persists in self-deception and ignorance is injured.
Say that again. Nobody's been
so
injured.
No one was ever injured by the truth, but he who persists in self-deception and ignorance is injured. So essentially what I take from that is the truth, whether you like it or not. But you can be delusional about a lot of things, but that doesn't mean, so being injured by being delusional is you've just got to cope with the truth. But going down a route of just kind of believing anything and being delusional about things or persisting in delusion doesn't really get you anywhere, because it might not be true. That's maybe a bit of a roundabout way, I don't really know, but I thought that was interesting. I think so much of religion is tied up in so much fear and what you're told to believe, and I just wish all children could maybe get to the age of 16 and they fill in a questionnaire to say, right, what do you think is true? And then you can go down that route if you want. But is it too late? I don't know. I mean, I came from a fairly easygoing family. They weren't going, oh, you've got to be this, you've got to be that. Oh no, I got married in a registry office. My parents weren't going, oh. But I have been at wedding fairs where a couple have come up to me and parents have said, think again if you think you're getting married with one of them. Because the parents have decided it will be where they want it to be. Quite often because they're paying for it.
If they're bankrolling it.
But that wouldn't have stopped me. I would rather have not got married than be married somewhere that I didn't think was right for me. You know, and we couldn't get married 30 years ago. We get married in a registry office. Nowadays, I would have got a celebrant. But we got married in a registry office because there was absolutely no way I was getting married in a church. But I would have loved to have had a humanist ceremony, because I would have wanted to have readings about loving dogs and stuff, and and maybe my dogs being there, because we had 2 Springer Spaniels at the time. But now it'd be kind of tricky because we've got 3 really badly behaved dogs. But that would have been lovely. Yeah. But I don't feel any less married because we get married in the registry office. It's fine, But nowadays you do have that choice, and more people are making that choice. And life should be about choice, not indoctrination.
Freedom,
yeah. Freedom of everything, really.
The truth will set you free.
The truth will set you free, as Marcus said, because he was a good guy. And, I don't know. I mean, nobody's perfect. I mean, I'm not some kind of, humanist nun, that's super perfect about everything. That's a bad analogy.
Humanist nun.
But do you know what I mean? I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But, it's just about trying to live a life that's good and decent. But that doesn't mean to say it has to be aligned with a religion. It doesn't,
Living a life that's good and decent. Most of the evil that's been done in the world was done by people who thought they were doing good. So as you brought up, like Adolf Hitler genuinely believed that he was doing the best for Germany. So how do you know what is good and what is the right thing to do and what is true as well, as you were saying? Like truth, delusion is dangerous. How do you know what is good and true and right?
I think taking people, regardless of what colour they are, what gender they are, what religion they are, because that was fundamentally what Hitler just wanted everybody to be white and blonde, and understanding that people are just people, as the guy in Holland said, people are just people no matter where you go. At the end of the day, if you're in a tribe somewhere in the Amazon that's never been discovered, they still have pretty much the same kind of society. And the minute you try and change society to be one colour, one creed, one religion, one way or the highway, you've got a problem. And I think, back in, obviously he wanted to run all Jews out of his entire area, Hitler. And these poor people were just, one minute they're living their lives and the next minute they're on a train. I mean, it was absolutely, and anybody that's a Holocaust denier, I really can't wrap my head around that at all. But I think surely, but again, they were scared. The minute Hitler got hold, it's a bit like the way I think Trump's technically going with these executive orders, just signs off because he can. There's such a danger of nobody saying no. Wait a minute here. Why did nobody? Because they were scared, and it's all about fear. And that was all about getting rid of an entire faith from a large part of Europe. And again, it was about fearing them, and I do think so much of religion is based on fear, and it shouldn't be. We should just all go on with our lives and bring up our children and be not frightened. It's all about fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of, oh God, if I don't do this, oh God, they're going to come and get me. But there needs to be people that stand up and say no. And again, in America, the way things are going, somebody needs to step up and say, no, I loved Obama. You might not know this, but I did have a full cardboard cutout of Michelle because I decided she is one of my friends, and I have a very good group of friends, as you know, Ross, and Michelle did stand in the background at various events where we were, and Michelle's come as well, because I think it was so amazing that a man of colour got into the White House, got that job, because he is such a decent, good person. She's a very good, decent person as well. And it was like, how on earth could they go from him to this in the space of, 10 years?
Why? How did that happen?
I am astonished. I don't know. I absolutely am. In 10 years, how has it degenerated?
Because as you say, they are two. You have one, the first
polar
ever
opposites.
African-American or non-white president.
Who
such a progressive
he didn't
moment.
have a religious agenda at all. And it's just suddenly, I mean, God, Trump with all these women, there's something they've got on him. I don't know what it is, but my God, but the womanizing, obviously the Epstein files or something going on there. And if he's suddenly deciding he's got some religious agenda.
But that's the thing. Trump is not religious.
He's not religious.
Never been religious. Like a Christian. He's never. There's a famous interview of him. Someone asked him, "Was like, oh, what's your favorite passage from the Bible?" He said, "Oh no,
I know many.
It's very private. I'd rather not talk about that."
It's an amazing verse. It's fabulous. It's amazing. It's 200% fabulous. But yeah, I mean,
famously never a religious person. But as you say, he seems to be at least using the Christian.
Absolutely, because that's what's getting him votes in
power.
Middle America and some parts of California as well. I have a friend who has a property in America and in California, and she was astonished at how fervently Trumpian a lot of them are. And California has always been a democratic state. I mean, California itself is one of the biggest economies in the world. And there's a definite fervour about Trump, maybe not so much in the coastal big towns, but certainly in the countryside. But their farmers are all getting decimated. The soybean producers are on their knees. And because I think one of the big countries, they've decided to go elsewhere. I can't remember where it is, but they're no longer getting their soybeans from America because they can't afford them or something like that. I can't remember, but it's... something's going to have to give. But there's talk of him wanting to do another term, so...
Yeah, well, there was, the third term.
But what I've heard that he could do is if Vance runs on the presidential ticket and he goes for vice president, and then Vance could resign and he would be president.
A loophole.
A loophole, yeah. But again, I'm not quite sure how we got into this, but I find it very interesting.
Yes,
and he doesn't have a dog either. Maybe he does, but every president's had a dog. George W. Bush had a Springer Spaniel, which made me think can't be that bad. Springer Spaniel, and then obviously there was Bo, the Portuguese water dog that the Obamas had, top dog there, fabulous. And Biden had a bit of a bitey Alsatian, bit of an Alsatian or German Shepherd, as you've got to call them now. They're not allowed to be Alsatians. But does he not have a dog? Odd. Maybe he's a cat man. Don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just morality. Is morality based on faith, or is faith based on morality? You know.
Is morality based on faith, or is faith based on morality? Yeah, I found. I think faith can really help people. As you say, there are some really, really good rules to live by in religious doctrines, which I've taken. And there's a good Bruce Lee quote, and he says, "I've got the Tao of Jeet Kune Do behind me." He says, "Take what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own."
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I found that reading, reading the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita as well.
Confucius is good as well.
Confucianism
and some of the Dalai Lamas actually.
Yeah, I love
his writings are good. Yeah.
It's beautiful, a beautiful system of beliefs and how to operate.
But they don't have a deity as such.
No, exactly. Yeah. In many ways, like I suppose the individual is the sacred being, and I think there is sanctity. If you, as you were saying earlier, if you stop and think about what we're actually doing here, the whole thing is a bloody miracle. We're made up of atoms that are billions of years old that started they were made in the middle of stars, and we're on a genetic continuum that's billions of years old, and the whole thing is bloody miraculous.
But it's science.
Yeah.
And I think Darwin, my God, he was having an uphill battle trying to explain evolution.
Especially against the church.
Against it. And he didn't, he said he was of a faith, but I think that was just the era in which he was born.
And Da Vinci as well, as you were talking about at the start.
Yeah, I mean, Da Vinci was a very complicated character. But at the time, you would have been done for blasphemy, or you would have been...
He was a gay man as well.
Oh, he was a gay man, absolutely.
So he couldn't that was again not
allowed.
I
was gutted when it was beloved Adrian, who played Leonardo in the Amazon series of Da Vinci, of Leonardo, and I was ready for it, and it was absolute mince.
Really?
I thought, this did not happen, because I love Leonardo. I know quite a lot about him. And I think he never finished anything. Never. He skipped off. He was like, bye now, see you later. And they don't think that many of his paintings were finished. I mean, there's a famous one in the Uffizi Gallery. His genius, this is when his Verrocchio, who was his master, he was in his studio, and there's a painting, and in the Uffizi Gallery, this painting's on the left-hand side, and I think it's a famous painting of Mary, John the Baptist, Jesus, and it's called this, I can't remember, anyway. And you can see that Leonardo painted the feet, and Verrocchio did, and some of the other students, they would, he would maybe paint the faces or whatever, but Leonardo was still one of his apprentices, and he painted the feet, and that was the painting where he said, I can't teach you anymore. And then next to that are two of his, it's the Annunciations, one of them, I think it's in the Uffizi Gallery, and you can just tell the difference in the class almost. But I mean, he skipped off and get paid, and then we go, see ya. And an interesting man. But as you say, he was a gay man in a time where that was not tolerated. And I think a lot of stuff was covered up. And his interest in science and everything, but we're talking about the 15th century here, and the Raphael, he and Michelangelo, there's that sort of triumvirate are very interesting, as a group. But yeah, I mean, but Leonardo, I personally think he was probably an atheist. Einstein said a few things. I've got a wee quote from Einstein. I've got it all going on here.
You do, Suzanne. You've got some brilliant minds there.
What have I got? Einstein. Yeah. Well, he talks about atheists, actually. He says he describes his humanist philosophy as a conviction that man can find meaning in life, short and perilous as it is, only through devoting himself to society. So if you give back to life, and obviously he did. He was a great scientist, but he also says the fanatical atheists are like slaves who are still feeling the weight of their chains, which they have thrown off after a hard struggle.
The fanatical atheists are feeling like slaves
Because I think fanatical atheists are just so hell-bent in trying to persuade people you're nuts because you believe in a God, your God. And actually, that's not their job to try and persuade other people. You're not going to get very far because it is such an ingrained, deep-rooted thing. You're not going to change everybody's mind overnight.
And they'll become the thing that they are standing against. Like they become almost fundamentalists.
They become fundamentalist atheists. And that's what I find about Richard Dawkins can be very, he can be controversial. Christopher Hitchens can as well by getting so angry about it. You're all idiots, and they're not. People are not idiots. That's just their choice to believe that. And that's the humanist way. It is people's choice. It's not up to you to ram being an atheist down people's throat in the same way I don't like Christianity or any other faith being rammed down mine. But fortunately, we live in a very democratic country where we have a choice. But unfortunately, there are some countries, look at Afghanistan, women aren't even being educated anymore. That's tragic. And these women who are taking their lives in their hands by opening underground schools, these are the people we should be celebrating. And
actually gives me goosebumps.
It does. It's absolutely horrendous. It's awful. And if these people want to come and live in this country, by all means, come on over. But that to me is just, and again, it's men that are making up these rules. I think if the world was a wee bit more balanced in terms of who's in power, I think the UK, if you look at our cabinet, when the Tories were in power as well, it is a melting pot of all different people and all different faces, all different colours and genders. But look at America now. They're a bunch of white men. And that is worrying. It's gone backwards. Sorry, we're not in here to talk about America, but I feel really I worry.
It has a big influence on our lives.
I stay up at night and worry about it. I mean, but their press is very partisan.
Exactly.
Which obviously here it's not. Yeah. And people do get a balanced view. Yeah. But if you Fox News or whatever, they are very one camp or the other. So if you're only watching Fox News, you're only going to hear about.
Same for CNN as well.
Oh, absolutely. CNN are equally. Because when I watched the first election with Trump, I got to know all these people like Wolf and Eden and all these people and knew all about them. And I'm going, Wolf's on, he knows what he's talking about. But you were very much getting the Democrat Party line, which isn't necessarily always right. Nobody is, no party is. But I do find it worrying that in certain countries I would not be tolerated as a humanist celebrant. I have gay friends that are not allowed to go to certain countries as two gay men. They'd be arrested, which is appalling. It's just, we're in 2025 and I can't believe this is still going on.
Are you a feminist?
Yes, I would say I am. I'm also an equalist. Because I think sometimes we should all just be the same. But I think in order to have equalism, you have to have feminism to bring it up to par. Because in so many ways, it's only recently, I think there was a court case, it was BBC newsreaders, the women weren't getting paid as much as the men. And I can't remember the highly qualified journalist lady, she took them to court, and I think she won. It was a constructive dismissal type thing, and I'm pretty sure she won because she was reading the same news and doing pretty much the same job, and women should be getting paid equally. I also think that in terms of things like childcare, it's still very much, it's the default is mum. And I think, I have a daughter and a son, and actually they're both very much of this mind that, if you're going to have children, give me grandchildren, please. Oh, cut that bit out. That's too much pressure. But I think, yes, a woman should give that's obviously they give birth to the child. But thereafter, they have two parents. And in order to bring it up to parity, there should be, I mean, obviously, there's more and more things like, paternity leave now, but a lot of companies, it's like, I think it's still kind of slightly frowned upon. Well, the woman does need the maternity leave because you're physically recovering, but it's also the man's child as well. Or even if it's two women or two men or whatever, there's two of you looking after this child. But I think in society, I mean, the Scandinavian countries are very good at this. It's like this, the default phone call, if they've got a bug, it doesn't always have to be the mum, because nowadays women are working just as much and just as hard and have striven to get to where they are in their career. And it's still that kind of, oh, well, you've had a baby, you only need to be the one that goes part-time. Well, no, why don't both parents get the option to do 4 days? Or, because childcare is so astronomically expensive. But we need more children, we need more people in this country, we need people to be having babies. But there are some parts of the country where it's so expensive, a lot of people are just going, I'm not doing that. And it needs to be a way of managing that both parents are in charge. It's not just the women. So to answer to your question, yes, I am a feminist, but I think ultimately we all need to be equal. But in order to get there, women need to shout from the rooftops, say, hang on a wee minute here.
As you say, put your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working like a dog here.
Yeah.
And again, that's why women need to vote. Women died for us to have the vote. My daughter cries every time she votes. She's like, because I've drummed into, you gotta vote. She died at a race course for you. But it is so important. If you want to have a voice, you need to do something about it. Yeah. And I think things are getting there. But, I also think men are sometimes slightly hard done to. There's almost a kind of wave towards, especially I can see why young men at the moment are feeling a bit disenfranchised. But that doesn't mean you have to go down this sort of very right-wing route of but that's just about the Andrew Tate route. But that's just about education. And adolescence, I think if everybody watches adolescence in schools, I think that would be a good idea. But to understand that women are equal, they are just as intelligent. I mean, girls outperform now in practically every way, shape and form. But I think that's just because they've lagged behind for so long and weren't given the kind of, oh, you'd be good at maths, you'd be good at engineering. It was, they were driven into certain things. When I was young, that certainly was the case. We got home ec and the boys get woodworking. As a woman can do woodwork and a boy might want to cook. But it's got to be levelled up. But there's a long way to go before we get there.
What do you think that means to be like? Everyone needs to be equal. Do you mean treated equally, equality of opportunity? Treated
equally in every way, shape or form, in terms of everything, in terms of being paid equally, in terms of being, treated in a boardroom equally, getting to a boardroom, because I would say probably the number of women on boards is still very low in terms of their numbers.
Even the FTSE 100, it's like maybe 5 max. So it's like 5%.
Yeah. But again, it's often because women have had to take a chunk out of their career and have had to crawl back into it. I mean, I had to give up my job in finance because I just found it untenable. Not because, I didn't want to do it. But if I'd had a job I really enjoyed, I would have really struggled. Because I took part-time. I was doing essentially 3 days a week. And I would go into work. I was doing the same job I was doing, but doing it in 3 days a week. And I was stressed out my box with 2 kids. And I think had I been doing a job I loved, that would have been a real shame. I just couldn't do it. And my husband was working away a lot as well. And we didn't have any help. So there was no choice. And I think choice is the most important thing. Again, my mum was very much, she came from a very, very working class background. I remember my grandfather, who was a shipyard worker. He'd worked in the yards for about 60 odd years. He retired with a carriage clock. It was grim. Highly, highly intelligent man.
What does that mean?
A carriage clock.
Yeah,
You just get, you used to get clocks that had a wee handle on the top. It used to be like a clock you'd take in your carriage and go, oh, right, it's time to go home from the opera or whatever. It's just a type of clock. It's like a wee brass clock and it had a wee handle. But that was something you used to get as a kind of retirement gift. Yeah. After 60 odd years working. He retired in his mid-70s. And he stood at Glasgow University when my sister graduated. And that was the proudest day of his life. Not marriages, not anything like that. His granddaughter she became a doctor. And that was huge, a huge achievement. He felt he'd achieved something. Because my mum was very, very bright, but again, they didn't really have the opportunities. But he sent my mum to elocution, which meant my mum spoke very well, managed to get herself a decent job. She didn't go to university, but her thing was, I want my girls to have a choice. And I think everybody should have a choice, but there are a lot of women out there who are stuck in a marriage, who are stuck in an abusive relationship, who are stuck in a bad place, who don't have a choice. And women need choice. And, I think the sooner this society comes up to par with that option, but education, knowledge is power as well.
Yeah, you've said that a couple of times, knowledge is power. And educating. Because that is the first thing, as you say in the Taliban, the first thing they've kind of done
is taking
away education. Yeah.
I mean, think about these poor girls.
Can you imagine?
I mean,
just despair.
It's absolutely horrendous. I mean, we used to sponsor a girl in India, and we chose to have a girl because, again, sometimes they don't get educated. It's nothing like as bad as in Afghanistan, but there comes a point where they stop.
If it's the boy or the girl, then it's the boy.
And she became a teacher because she wanted to pass on that sort of knowledge that she had. But Mum used to bang on and on and on and on about choice. I want my girls to have choice because, I mean, she didn't need to exercise a choice because she was very happily married to my dad. But, I think she might have struggled a wee bit if she had wanted to leave. What would have been the choice? And I think a lot of women of her generation, she was born in the 30s, grew up in the 50s, and it was all very kind of, I want a house with, a picket fence and all that. And they were but my mum wasn't on the mortgage till about 1989 or something like that. I mean, men very much had the control. And it's about control, it's about choice, it's about freedom, and not fear. And a lot of women live in fear because they have no choice. It's the same words banned about all the time, so, yeah. You've lost the will to live, Ross. You're like, oh God.
Quite the opposite.
This is a lot to process, isn't it? I told you once you get me started. Anchovies, why?
Pineapple on pizza.
Your mum likes pineapple on pizza. What the hell? Who eats pineapple on pizza? Oh my, anchovies and a Caesar salad. Ew, yuck. Don't get those
but
two.
They should have the freedom to choose.
Freedom to choose and say no. But then you get some
choice.
Places that go, oh, they're actually already in it. And, and you go, okay, well, I won't be having the Caesar salad then. But I have the choice to choose something else. You're not just stuck with Caesar salad with anchovies. It's all allegorical there, Ross,
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
I think sanity will prevail. So optimistic, because I think these things do tend to come in waves. If you look at history, it does kind of peak and flow. It's a bit like a bull and bear market in Wall Street. It does kind of go up and down and up and down, and I think we're kind of on a bit of a crest of a wave at the moment, albeit quite a big one, economically and in terms of just democracy. But I like to think that sort of reason will prevail, and that the world isn't going to hell in a handcart just yet. Putin can't live forever, neither can Trump. Maybe if somebody gets Trump a dog, he might turn out okay after all. But Putin likes dogs, actually, which is interesting. But anyway, and riding bareback on horses. But I don't know. I can be quite pessimistic about more sort of local things. I tend to get, oh God, but in terms of the worldwide sphere of life, I think you've got to be optimistic, because if everybody was pessimistic, we would all just be blown up. Boom. So I think sanity will prevail, and I think somebody will come out of the woodwork and stand up to the oppressors in the world in general, hopefully. I'm not sure how soon that will happen, but I like to think they will. There's going to be a new mayor in New York. Yeah, and Trump can't stand him. But I think he's communist. Well, he's only 34 or something like that. He's very young, but I think he's the antithesis of Trump. Yep. Although you can go the other way and be, some of the things he's saying he's going to do, I'm thinking, how are you doing that? But anyway, I think he is a voice in the ether of not agreeing with Trump, and Trump's a New Yorker through and through. Mm-hmm. The governor of California is quite a good guy. I think he might, but I don't think he wants to be. I don't think he wants to be president. But I think a wee persuasion there might. I'd like to get Obama back. I don't think that would work.
No, he's already served 2 terms.
They can. I know, but I don't know if can you come back. I don't think you can. No. But I think if the world was pessimistic, I think we'd have to, I've read the book by the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda. It's very good. She's interesting. Yeah. Maybe get her into America and do a wee book tour. I think she would persuade a few people, because she had a baby while she was Prime Minister.
I was in New Zealand when that happened.
I mean, what a gal!
Went on maternity leave as soon as she won.
But she didn't want to tell him, because I think she'd had quite a problem conceiving. Right. And when she found out she was pregnant, she was like, "Oh, holy crap, I'm pregnant!" And she felt absolutely grim for the first few weeks and was being sick behind the scenes. And eventually, she had to tell her colleagues, "I'm pregnant," and they went, "Okay, we'll deal with this." But I think in the best New Zealand way, they did deal with it, and she did a really good job. And
she won.
She's a very interesting woman, and more people like her need to step up. Unfortunately, I think the women that have been in power here, there's just one drama after another. I mean, God, get your estate agents in line and your stamp duty, love, What the hell? But I'd like to see some more women coming forward that I think people want to vote for. But would you go into politics? I wouldn't. I mean, back in the day, people come up through the unions or they come up through commerce, but a lot of them seem to come straight from a PPE at Oxford and go straight into politics. And I don't know how you can be a politician and speak on behalf of people when you've never actually lived the life or worked. A lot of them have, obviously, but and
but you get like the Boris Johnsons who just they breeze through these kind of elite private schools straight into Westminster, and then you get them in, and then you get someone like that in charge when a true crisis hits. And
I've read quite a lot about boarding schools. There's a couple of writers, Richard Beard's one of them, Alex Renton's another. They've written about the type of person that comes out of these institutions. And that self-deprecation and that kind of it'll all be good sort of thing they are a product of that environment, and they believe that they can do anything they like. Not that's not true of all people that have been at boarding school. I have known people who have, and they're perfectly lovely people. But I think if you go into that environment and go into politics, and it becomes a kind of old boys network, dangerous.
Maybe a sense of entitlement.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, he was a journalist essentially. I mean, he was editor of the Spectator for a long time, and you know, I just don't know where. I mean, did you ever watch the drama about the party they had during lockdown?
No,
Number 10.
No.
Oh my god, watch it. It's an eye opener, and he just thought that was fine. Doesn't matter. We're not counted. We can do what we like.
We just set the rules. We don't follow the rules.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like Prince Andrew is now just Andrew. And again, another person who just thought I can do whatever I like, and hell mangel, I'm a princey. But again, an unelected body of people, I think, is dangerous. And I think back in the day, kings and queens thought they were put there by God because that was what they genuinely believed. I think the Queen was the last person, the deceased Queen, Elizabeth II, was the last person who I suspect thought she was put there by God, because she was an extremely religious person, very devout. Her mother was even more so. And I'm not convinced that, and they're much more out there, they're much more in the public eye. Before, there were people behind a wall and it was like, oh my God, the Queen, like they were a sparkly crown and they sat on a throne, and that's completely changed. But the royalty's a whole other discussion. Get the king in, Ross. He'll chat.
The king. I would love to speak to King Charles.
Yeah.
I would absolutely. I would love to speak to all of the other. Again, another fascinating, another really important part of British culture. I think on the whole, mostly they seem like decent people. But then, as you say, it's just this weird ancient.
But what if wee George wants to be a dentist or something? He has no choice.
No, he doesn't.
And to grow up thinking I want to be a dentist. I'm not saying he wants to be a dentist, but he might want to be a fireman or a bus driver or whatever. He has no choice, and it must be really hard to grow up knowing, well, that's me. What if he doesn't want to be in the military, which he'll probably have to be. Prince Edward got turfed into the Marines and he hated it. He wanted to be an actor, and he started up with a TV company, and but I think a lot of these people work really, really hard. But I think the country's starting to kind of go, what is this all about?
Why are we paying so much?
Why are we paying so much money
for Prince Andrew to be doing these, or not Prince Andrew? Sorry, for Andrew.
He's just Andrew. Call him Andy.
Andy, yeah. For Andy to be doing
Andy.
Why are we paying for him to be jetting around the world to go to these islands? And
well, I've read the entitled book.
What is that?
It's the book by Andrew Lowney about Andrew and Sarah, and my God, it's an eye opener. I'm surprised a lot of the financial irregularities haven't been brought to the fore. I think they will be. There's an awful lot of money has swilled around him for a long time that nobody knows how, why, where it came from, and how they've managed to live the life they have when they're not working royals and they don't get anything from the civil list. So again, not to do with humanism, but again, I don't like that privilege.
And it's about being a human as well.
It's about being a human, and no human should be any better than any other. I would not curtsy to anyone. I would not bow and scrape to anyone, because I would much rather. I'd love to meet Stephen Fry, for example, because I think he's a really interesting person. I would love to meet Leonardo. Obviously, that would be the dream. I'd love to meet him and say, what were you actually thinking? What were these drawings about? Michelangelo, how did you paint that ceiling? Because that's dead good. Was it painted by numbers? But it's a lot of these people to me are human miracles. If you want to use the word miracle, they were miraculous. Mozart in his genius, that to me is miraculous, not some miracle in a kind of religious sense. Because what is miraculous? I think things people do are miraculous. Somebody that can save a child who's in death's door, that's able to go in and go, right, we will cure you, or something like that. These people that are going into war zones and pulling people out of buildings, they're miraculous. They're
heroes. They're
heroes. That's people that should be sanctified. No, that's not the right word. not
Canonized.
Not, well, I suppose that's a religious thing, but that we have to have miracles happen to get canonized. What constitutes a miracle depends what you mean by that. But these people they're the ones that I think should be celebrated. I mean, I very much believe that you can still have the UK and talk about the crown, because they do this in France, and they don't do this in France because it's completely Republican. But if you talk about the crown, there doesn't need to be a human head under it. So you can still have all your the colour and all these pomp and circumstancy things that people love. But you can just have a crown. It doesn't mean to say, you talk about the crown, does it need to be a person? Does it need to be a family? I would argue no, because it is all just about symbolism, and that crown represents the people of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland. And, and on your passport there's a crown, but does it need to be a person? You could argue not. I mean, France manages to have all their buildings and not great security, obviously, and their crown jewels and all that. Oops, a man with an angle grinder, lovely diamonds, magic, suits me. But people still go in their swathes to Versailles, and there's not a king in there anymore. It doesn't mean to say you lose your heritage. But is it fair, even? Do they have a choice? Coming back to choice, people don't have a choice. To be the royal family, that's it. You're the king, whether you like it or not. Chaz. And arguably, I think the women in a lot of these families have actually been the stronger ones. Poor Prince Charles looks absolutely knackered. And I feel very sorry for him. He's waited 76 years for this job to come his way, and who waits that long for their promotion? It's quite a long time. But I don't know, I'm getting off the point here, Ross. But it's all tied into humanity and choices and fear, and I think this country's probably scared. Oh God, we don't have a royal family. Oh no, what will we do? What is the alternative? Because nobody's ever actually said, well, this is the alternative.
Yeah. And there's lots of societies that function just fine without one.
Absolutely. I don't agree with having an unelected House of Lords, for example. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, they did away with hereditary peerages, which is fine. But again, it is just a lot of the time it's people like Michelle Mone getting put in a position in the House of Lords and voting on extremely important legislation. Because she sold 120 million's worth of dodgy PPE. So that's probably litigious. I probably can't say that. You better
you
cut
can,
that.
It's factual.
Yeah, but selling, and she got a peerage. And it's all their mates, and but the royal family have been caught up in if you give lots of money to certain charities, there might be a wee knighthood coming your way. That's been documented, not necessarily by the royal family, but sometimes I think if you're going to accept some kind of award, it shouldn't just be for doing your job. If you get a knighthood for being chairperson of Blob Inc., that shouldn't be, give you a wee knighthood because you've been dead good. The guy in the mailroom could have been working like an absolute bam for 40 years in the mailroom and have been doing an amazing job. But companies work from the bottom up, and you're only there because of the people below you, and you've been paid a fortune for doing it. So I think the people who are doing extraordinary things should be the ones getting awarded, like OBEs and MBEs and all the rest of it. I think there's a wee bit of misguidance in this country about that.
Maybe the wrong people are getting the credit.
Well, yes, I don't think you should just get a job for being the equerry to Prince Charles, or a job that you've been getting paid handsomely for God knows how long. I think if you are, if you've maybe been a lifeboat captain, and you do that extraordinary to your job or whatever, that's something. Or you're a doctor or a nurse or a whatever with Médecins Sans Frontières, and you're going out and doing really good work, or you're helping with refugees, or you're helping with women in crisis or whatever. But again, I think that's something that's wrong with this country. Like, why do you get an award just for doing your job? That's ridiculous. So yes, but if somebody offered me an OBE for services to humanism, I'd go, don't be ridiculous. I'm not, I don't do as much as I should in terms of promoting humanism. There's a lot of very good people that do that. But, that's the sort of thing that I think would help in terms of around the world, just realising that this world does not revolve around faith.
Do you have any a parting message, thought, or piece of wisdom that you would like a listener to take with them after listening all this time?
Live your life with peace, enjoyment, love and pleasure.
Live your life with peace, enjoyment, love and pleasure.
Mm-hmm.